Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're looking at how Taiwan is adjusting to its changing relationship with the U.S. under the new presidential administration. Taiwan has historically enjoyed strong bipartisan support in Washington, often seen as a key democratic ally, especially considering China.
Yeah, Taiwan's democratic identity has always been central to its relationship with the U.S.
But this new administration is signaling a bit of a shift, taking a more transactional approach. They're raising concerns about Taiwan's security spending, and they're really focusing on its dominance in the semiconductor industry.
Right.
And this has prompted some reassessment in Taipei.
It has. The administration's comments about Taiwan needing to increase its defense investments and maybe even reconsidering its semiconductor production, that was a real wake-up call.
So how is Taiwan responding to this? What are they doing to adapt?
Well, they've taken a proactive stance, sending officials to Washington with some detailed military spending plans, trying to really demonstrate their commitment to strengthening their defenses. They're also proposing new energy partnerships with American companies,
Oh, interesting.
like potential deals for liquefied natural gas from Alaska.
So it seems like they're really trying to showcase their willingness to contribute and find some common ground. Is there a particular message they're going for with these initiatives?
I think they're strategically highlighting the value of Taiwan's semiconductor industry. To American interests, they want to emphasize that disrupting this industry, through tariffs or pressure to relocate production, could have some real negative consequences for the U.S.
Yeah.
In fact, TSMC executives, they met with the nominee for Commerce Secretary back in January to discuss these concerns directly.
Taiwan's global dominance in semiconductor manufacturing, particularly TSMC's position, they're the world's leading chip maker. This really adds a significant layer of complexity to all of this.
Absolutely. That reliance on Taiwanese semiconductors, it creates leverage for Taiwan, but also vulnerability.
For sure. And this brings us to another point of contention, the significant trade surplus that Taiwan holds with the United States.
Yeah, that's another key factor. Last year, Taiwan had a record trade surplus with the U.S., reaching $74 billion, according to U.S. data.
Wow.
And this new administration, with its focus on fair trade, they're definitely scrutinizing this imbalance.
So Taiwan is facing pressure on multiple fronts here to increase defense spending, address that trade surplus, and navigate the complexities of its semiconductor industry. And this pressure is coming from various voices within the administration, including figures known for their critical stance on China.
You're right. We're seeing the influence of figures like Marco Rubio, he's the Secretary of State, and Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, both known for their hawkish stance on China.
Yeah.
Their views on Taiwan's role in countering China's ambitions, that's likely to shape the administration's policy.
But this also marks a pretty significant departure from the previous administration, where some pretty prominent officials were really vocal supporters of Taiwan. This absence further underscores that shift in dynamic.
It does, and we can't overlook the perspective from the Pentagon, which has a significant stake in this relationship.
So what's their take on the U.S. commitment to Taiwan's security in the context of this evolving dynamic?
Well, there's a contingent within the Pentagon that's advocating for limiting U.S. military commitments abroad. They're not necessarily eager to engage in conflicts on Taiwan's behalf.
Are there any specific figures in the Pentagon who represent this viewpoint?
Yeah, Elbridge Colby, he's the nominee for Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. He's been pretty vocal about this. He argues that Taiwan shouldn't assume its indispensability to the United States.
That's a pretty significant statement, especially given his position. Does he offer any specific suggestions for Taiwan in light of this perspective?
He and others in the Pentagon, they suggest that Taiwan should target military spending of at least 5% of its economic output.
Wow.
Essentially doubling their current spending.
This 5% target seems to be a recurring point of contention. How's Taiwan reacting to this suggestion, especially considering they already have a backlog of undelivered American arms?
Publicly, Taiwan states they are committed to increasing their military spending. However, privately, experts and officials question the feasibility of reaching that 5% target. They also express frustration over that backlog of undelivered military equipment. They feel like they're being pressured to buy more while waiting for past orders to be fulfilled.
That raises a really interesting point. If Taiwan's already investing in defense equipment, but they're facing these delays in delivery, how does that impact their perceived commitment to security?
It creates a complex situation where Taiwan's actual spending might not align with the perceived investment, potentially fueling the concerns voiced by the new administration.
It seems like Taiwan is navigating a very delicate balancing act here, managing these various pressures while trying to to maintain this crucial security alliance with the U.S.?
It is. Their response has been multifaceted, encompassing diplomatic outreach, proposals for new partnerships, and a willingness to increase defense spending. However, the complexities of the trade imbalance, the semiconductor industry's role, and those differing views within the U.S. administration, it all adds significant challenges.
It's clear this evolving relationship between the U.S. and Taiwan, it has far-reaching implications, impacting not only their bilateral ties, but also the broader geopolitical landscape.
Exactly. And as this situation continues to unfold, it's crucial to understand the motivations, strategies, and potential consequences for all parties involved. It really highlights the tightrope that Taiwan's walking.
Trying to assert its autonomy while also managing these powerful relationships and economic realities.
Exactly. And this evolving dynamic between the U.S. and Taiwan, it has significant implications for the entire region.
It's not just a bilateral issue, it's about the whole geopolitical chessboard, with China obviously being a major factor.
Precisely. China considers Taiwan as its territory, and any perceived shift in U.S. support, that has major consequences for their ambitions in the region.
Let's explore those implications further. What are some potential scenarios here as this relationship evolves?
Well, one possibility is that Taiwan, under pressure from the U.S., starts to distance itself economically from China.
Okay.
We could see a reorientation of trade partnerships, with Taiwan strengthening ties with the U.S. and its allies.
So an economic decoupling of sorts.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be risky for Taiwan, considering how intertwined its economy is with China's?
It would definitely carry risks, but it would also present some opportunities. Taiwan could leverage its advanced technology and manufacturing to forge new partnerships, particularly in sectors like renewable energy and high-tech industries.
Building on those energy deals they've already proposed with American companies.
Right.
However, wouldn't such a move provoke a strong reaction from China?
Most likely, China wouldn't just passively observe its economic influence over Taiwan diminish. We could see increased economic pressure, perhaps even attempts to isolate Taiwan internationally.
So potential economic friction with China. What about the military front? Could this new dynamic increase the risk of conflict?
It is a possibility. If Taiwan senses a decline in U.S. security guarantees, they might feel compelled to take a more assertive military stance.
Meaning increasing their own defensive capabilities beyond what the U.S. is suggesting, perhaps even developing their own offensive capabilities.
Potentially, but any move in that direction would be perceived as highly provocative by China. It could trigger a military buildup in the region and escalate tensions.
A security dilemma where both sides feel compelled to arm themselves in response to the other's actions.
Precisely. And that's a dangerous spiral, increasing the risk of miscalculation and unintended escalation with potentially devastating consequences.
So how do these complex geopolitical dynamics affect the average person? Why should they care?
Well, these shifts have real-world implications. Extending beyond Taiwan and the U.S., the stability of the region impacts global trade, technology supply chains, even the prices of everyday goods.
The ripple effects could be felt worldwide.
Absolutely. Taiwan's dominance in semiconductor production is crucial for the global tech industry. Any disruption to that supply chain, whether through conflict or economic pressure, could significantly impact everything, from smartphones to cars.
It's like the butterfly effect. One small change can have huge, unpredictable consequences.
Exactly. And in this case, the potential consequences are not just economic. A conflict in the Taiwan Strait could draw in other major powers, creating a global crisis with far-reaching implications for peace and security.
It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You see the potential danger, but it feels like things are moving inexorably towards a collision.
That's a powerful analogy. It highlights the importance of diplomacy and dialogue in navigating these complex issues.
So what can be done? Are there ways to de-escalate the situation and find a path towards a more stable future?
There are always paths to de-escalation, but they require careful diplomacy, clear communication, and a willingness to compromise on all sides.
Which is often easier said than done, especially in such a highly charged geopolitical environment.
It is, but the alternative is simply unacceptable. A conflict in this region would have devastating consequences for everyone involved, and the stakes are only getting higher as Taiwan finds itself at the center of this global power struggle.
What can we as individuals do to stay informed and engaged on this issue?
Well, firstly, stay informed, read credible news sources, follow expert analysis, and engage in thoughtful discussions about these complex issues. The more we understand the dynamics at play, the better equipped we are to advocate for peaceful solutions.
Remembering that these aren't just abstract geopolitical issues, they have real-world implications for people's lives, livelihoods, and the future of our planet.
Exactly. We can't afford to be complacent. The choices we make today will have a profound impact on the world we live in tomorrow.
This has been an incredibly insightful look into the evolving relationship between the U.S. and Taiwan.
A relationship filled with complexities, challenges, and potential pitfalls, but also with opportunities for cooperation and peaceful resolution.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the shifting political landscape to the potential economic and military implications. But I think the key takeaway here is the importance of staying informed and engaged.
I completely agree. The situation is constantly evolving, and it's crucial to stay abreast of the latest developments and their potential consequences.
We've discussed these pressures that Taiwan faces, but it's not like their response has been entirely passive. They're actually pushing back in certain areas.
Oh, absolutely. They're demonstrating that they're not going to simply acquiesce to every demand. There's a sense of national pride there and a determination to protect their own interests.
We see that in their response to these suggestions about increasing their military spending. They're not opposed to spending more, but they are pushing back on the specifics, especially given that backlog of undelivered equipment.
Right. It's like they're saying, okay, we're committed to our own defense, but let's address the existing issues first before we start talking about a budget increase. It's a reasonable stance.
Yeah, I think it underscores that this relationship isn't one-sided. It is a partnership, albeit complex, and Taiwan is making sure that its voice is heard.
For sure. And they are leveraging their strengths, like their dominance in the semiconductor industry. That provides them with some leverage in these negotiations.
Yeah, almost like they're saying, hey, you need us as much as we need you, which, given the global reliance on those chips, is accurate.
It is. It adds another layer of complexity to this whole equation. It's not just about security and trade. It's about global technology and economic power.
It's almost reminiscent of a real-life game of Risk, with all these major powers kind of vying for influence and control.
Right. And Taiwan is right there at the center of the board, a crucial piece in this geopolitical chess match.
So as we conclude this deep dive, what would you say is the key takeaway that you want our listener to remember?
I would say the relationship between the U.S. and Taiwan is at a very critical juncture. Decisions that are made in the coming months and years are going to have significant consequences, not only for these two countries, but for the entire region, and frankly, beyond.
It's a reminder that we are all interconnected in ways we might not always realize. Events on the other side of the world can really have an impact on our own daily lives.
Absolutely. And that underscores the importance of staying informed, engaging in thoughtful dialogue, and advocating for peaceful solutions to these complex challenges.
Because ultimately, diplomacy and cooperation are the only paths to a genuinely stable and prosperous future. Thank you for joining us on this insightful exploration. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.